Welcome to POS, the podcast where we find the piece of shit and stories you don't give a fuck about. With me, as always, is the lovely, the effervescent Bobby Tamburo. And before we get to Bobby and get to our guest today, if you are sitting at home and you are eating food because you're a fat piece of shit, it's bland. It's stupid. You need good shit. You need Silk City hot sauce. It's the best sauce. And as we've said many times, and Jeff actually got reached out to me and said, you know what? I told you before not to say this, but now keep saying it. It is the only sauce that will not sell their sauce to pedophiles. If you touch a kid, you can't touch the sauce. That's the rule. Now, a lot of the art they have on there looks like pedophiles, but that's just comedians that we know, like Aaron Berg and Chrissy Bear and Bob Levy and Rob Saul and people like that. But they're not pedophiles. They're just comedians. And there's also dragons and shit like that too. But it's great sauce, made in incredible products, homegrown in Vermont by Jeff. I think he makes his babies like farm in the fields and pull plows and stuff. It's hard work. And they're the only straight people in Vermont. It's mostly lesbians and then them. So help them support by buying the sauce. And if you go to SilkCityHotSauce.com and use the promo code POS, you save 15%. So you get good sauce, you help good people, no kids get touched, world salt. We did it all. Bobby, start the show.
Hey, what an intro. Jeff really is living the American dream, having a small family in Vermont, making them do slave labor and child labor to manufacture your hot sauce.
To be clear, that's allegedly, I made that up. So
okay. Maybe he's not living the American dream.
So I don't know if he can do that.
Oh boy. Well, buy it so he does. Use the promo code POS so he doesn't stop sponsoring us after I misquoted Pat there. And speaking of
POS stands for products of slavery. That's what it stands for this episode.
And speaking of the American dream, a man who lives it every day to the fullest. You know him, you love him. It's the steamroller of comedy. Dick Carr, Rich Carucci, everybody.
Yo, what's happening, boys?
Is that the couch or is that a comforter?
The wife's. I'm at the wife's.
That's not. I like that.
Yeah, that's some kind of blanket she has.
I was gonna say, it's got to be a blanket. That'd be a loud couch. But that's a great comfort.
She has tiny furniture. She's like tiny. I'm too big for her furniture, so she gets upset that I have everything sunken in.
I do like that it's furniture's tiny. You're not huge. You know, that's a better way to put it. Bobby only knows tiny furniture. Well, it's large furniture to Bobby.
Yeah. Everything's large to me. It's really fun sharing a seat with Garrett and watching me put it down to the lowest level every day and him raising it up to the highest level after I'm done with it.
You know what? I've never seen Garrett stand up. Is he tall?
He's like 6'8".
Because I always just see him sitting in a chair.
Yeah.
That's it. 6'8"?
That's an exaggeration. Yeah. Probably 6 foot.
He's 6 foot. He's pretty tall. I was like 6'8". Did I miss some?
No, but Bobby goes, I'm kidding. I mean 6 feet, which isn't that tall.
It's all
Bobby,
a perspective
I'm 6
thing.
Feet tall.
Yeah, it's a perspective thing, though. Anything over like 5'11" all looks the same to me.
Nice.
Just call it lucky.
So, Rich, how are you, man? How you been? I haven't seen you in years. We started telling stories about you because we were talking about fun shows when you first start off, fire hall shows.
Yeah.
I did shows with Mark DeMeo and stuff, and we'd go visit you years and years ago, and you come down to Connecticut. So, how you been?
I'm hanging in there, driving all over the place for shit money and, wishing that somebody threw a can of beer at me. I got to pay for all my beer.
Or that you got it on tape. I'm sure you fought at least a dozen times after shows.
Oh, I've had somebody try to stab me. I've been chased out of places. Just nobody does anything cool because I could always use a beer. I don't know.
There are a couple of gigs with you. I'll dip out early just because I'm like, it's going to end rough by the end of the night.
Wait, who threw beer?
There was an Uncle Vinny's incident the other day where somebody threw a beer against the wall, and I forgot the female comedian, but she picked it up and drank it, and it was pretty cool because he was heckling her. She said something back, and the guy threw a beer.
A guy threw a can of beer at a woman.
Well, the best part is
a can of beer right at her head, pretty much.
She was arguing with a woman who was heckling, and then a guy in the party threw a beer, and it's like you weren't even involved, dude.
And that's a BYOB place. I know that place, like a ravioli stand comedy club.
Then they can't even get mad at the venue because they brought their own beer. So it's like they didn't throw the venue's beer.
Yeah.
After you throw the beer on the video, you can hear two distinct voices that are neither the heckler nor the beer thrower or the comedian. And it's the security guard going, "Come on, dude, you can't do that." And then it's another guy going, "I am never hanging out with you people in public ever again."
I heard that one.
Oh, that's awesome. And I like that. No, but that's awesome that the comic drank the beer. Just go with the flow. What are you going to do? Like, the show has to go on.
Yep.
Your set's not over. You got to keep doing. Like, it only happened to me once. I mean, I've had threats of it, but only once has someone come at me on stage and tried to hit me. and I had to do 25 minutes afterwards. And it's weird. Like once they reset everything, like no one's in the mood to hear a story afterwards. You know what I mean? So it is odd that you have to keep going. But if a beer is thrown and you can drink the beer, have fun with that, you can make it cool and keep going with it. You know?
She did.
She did. Yeah, I think it was her set was almost over. She was doing like a question and answer. But yeah, she drank the beer. Everybody was cheering, and then I guess they threw the guy out. I'm not sure what happens. I guess you got to leave after that.
I think his name's Vinny, and you're not allowed to throw him out.
Yeah.
Is she? I you guys don't remember her name, but is she a well-known comic?
No.
All right. So this, weirdly enough, this might be her thing, right?
Yes,
like,
very much. It is kind of her moment, but she's not known. Yeah. She's not known like outside of the comedy community. But within the comedy community, she's like really respected for.
Oh no, I didn't mean that. I just meant like if you know her name, say her name. It doesn't matter. But I just meant it's like a viral. If it becomes a viral thing,
yeah,
one of two things can happen. One, she tries to recreate a lot of comics, the Hofstetter thing, where you try to recreate shit so people pay attention to you because of what's going on the outside. Or two, audiences go, "Oh, it's cool. We can throw beers at this chick." So you have to be careful when she has shows because they're going to think that. Like the comic Corey Rodriguez, he has a hilarious comic. He used to do this joke about eating bananas and stuff. And people that were fans of his, and he's a black guy, you know, his name is Corey. And a fan when I was at Foxwoods threw a banana at him. Now, the rest of the audience didn't know he told a joke about it, so they thought it was racist. So other people got mad when you're throwing bananas at a black guy. He's like, not a black guy. He eats like a monkey. And I was like, what the fuck?
That's a joke. Yeah.
And the escalation was great. And Corey got mad for getting his own joke for a minute. Then I had to settle down. I'm like, dude, whatever. But like, it's still insane for a white guy to throw a banana at a black guy,
not a good
no matter
move.
what the joke is.
Unless if it's a soccer game in Russia. Because there are like certain pro teams that are not allowed to have fans because they just won't stop.
Yes. Well, Russia shouldn't have anything anyway. They did it. They're all set. They have ballet and spies. That's all they do.
And wrestling. They're allowed to have wrestling, but your opponent has to be a bear. Yeah.
Not pro wrestling. Like I like real fighting animals wrestling.
They like to do stuff shirtless there too for some reason.
They love it. They love being. And they're not chiseled people.
No,
but they're just like your neighbor. Yeah,
they don't have.
No, you're right. They're just like a guy.
They don't have tiny furniture in Russia.
No, they're probably hard furniture. I can't picture being comfortable in Russia.
Yeah, that comforter you got is not in Russia. That is not happening. No.
It'd kill you for having that.
Everyone's got like an outdoor bench. Like that's inside. I feel like it's just like hardwood. It's like a Cracker Barrel inside in Russia.
Yeah. It's stuff you could wrestle a bear with, like you were saying. Like they like wrestling bears and rocks and water. They like cold water, hot water. Like
wrestling rocks sounds like the greatest show of all time. Like who wins? Get the rock one again. It's great. So what have you been up to? You started before the show saying that your day was shit. You had a wacky day or what?
It's been the last couple of days. I had to go to West Virginia. I had to go for Thursday with another guy, drive to West Virginia. We did it in like a 9-hour ride. Yeah. We get there, have a couple beers, crash, get up the next day, do some stuff. It was like what was it called? Snowshoe Mountain. It's you're a mile high on this mountain in West Virginia. It's a lodge, and they're doing
You were marathon training, right?
Yeah, they're doing Russian train. They're doing bicycling down the hill. Those trail bikes. They're bicycling. I'm not going to try that. I don't care how much I drink. I know I'm not at my age. I know that's a bad idea.
Right.
So we rode the tram down. We're hanging out. That night we go to do the private event. They bumped me from it. They're like, we can't have both of you. And the other guy was the one they hired. I was going to open for him.
Right.
He's like, I'm sorry, I can't give you any time. So I'm like, mother, I'm like a little pissed.
Yeah.
So then he's telling me we're going to leave right after the show. And I'm like, we got a room for the night. We had 2 rooms, fireplace. I mean, I brought my own bathrobe because the ones in the hotels never fit. So I bring my own, And he's going, don't steal anything from the hotel. I go, steal anything? The towels don't fit.
We're in West Virginia. I'm leaving everything I find here.
I did take the bar of soap. It smelled. They were wrapped up like it was wrapped up. You're in a nice place when the remote controls in cellophane. You're like, ooh. No.
When do you rock the robe? I'm not a robe guy. So like when you come out of the shower, you like to wear a robe and walk around a little bit?
I got flip flops. I don't go barefoot. I'll have flip flops. I bring a robe. in case I got to share a room with this guy. I don't want to be like.
Oh, so you didn't know you had separate rooms, so you were going robe to take care. Okay, I get
Right, and
that.
plus I'll wear it. I'll bring one with me anyway. And he's making fun of me because I got a giant suitcase and we're going overnight.
Yeah.
So
And
then-
inside's a robe, which is fucking hysterical. And you have an
Right,
extra
robe.
large robe, which is crazy.
3 pairs of sneakers and shoes, 4 pairs of pants. Well, we're going one night. I got all this stuff.
Yeah, but it's
So,
not like you're flying. And what if something happens? What if you tear
Right.
3 pairs of shoes?
What happens when we get drunk and disappear for a few days? It's my first road trip with this guy, and I known him for a long time. So we get done with the show. It's like 11 at night. He goes, "Let's drive home now." And I knew he wanted to. He was telling me when the show's over, we're going to drive home. So he wants me to drive. He wants to drive down the mountain and then have me drive the rest of the way so he could sleep. And I'm like, fuck that.
I didn't even get any time tonight. I'm not
Right.
staying
I
up
start
all night.
drinking. So I start drinking, and I know he's going to get mad because he's like, so I start drinking. Then we get in the car, and he wanted gas, and I go, "Stop at Sheets," because they got the beer cave.
beer
and Sheetz has
caves.
those beer caves. Right. I get some of that Johnny Bootlegger wine, that stuff.
Oh, yeah.
We stop. I grab a couple of 4 bottles of Johnny Bootlegger, different flavors. It's like the redneck Mad Dog, and I get in the car. And I'm drinking. He doesn't know I'm drinking it. Then he hears me crack a beer, and that's when he fucking was pissed. So he drove home. We didn't talk the whole way. It was like 7 hours. 7 hours of silence. He's furious. I keep drinking. We get to his house after 7 hours. I still have to drive an hour to my house. I jump in my car. I drive an hour home. I get home, pass out, wake up. I realize I left my $1,200 gold chain with my skull on it at the hotel. So I call the place, and of course, nobody's seen it. And no, we don't know what you're talking about. So I'm like, okay, I lost that. And me and him still weren't talking. We're still not talking. So that was this weekend. I was ready to quit. I'm ready to quit comedy by Sunday. I'm like, that's it. I'm done. And then today, I go get a car for my kid. My buddy gives me. I drive down to Tom's River. So it's like an hour and 45-minute ride down the Garden State Parkway. I get there, I get the car. My buddy was telling me, yeah, the tire was making some kind of weird noises, but I tightened all the lugs and everything's fine. So I'm driving home on the Parkway, and I drive halfway. It's about 2-hour ride. So I'm an hour driving, and it's going, but it's making this noise. The whole car is shaking. I can't even look in the mirror. I feel like I'm going to throw up from just the way it's bumping.
Motion sickness, yeah.
Yeah, I'm going, this car is like vibrating like hell. Like, I never drove it before. It's like a 2005 Volvo or something. So I'm like, it was driving pretty good a minute ago. But so my girl's behind me in my truck, and she finally pulls up. She goes, the wheel, there's something wrong with the wheel. I pull over. It had 2 lugs left on the wheel on the front.
No.
I had to pull off in like Irvington, which is a pretty bad area in Jersey. I pulled over there. I had to get AAA to come, but man, that was an all-day thing. I started at noon. I got home at like 7:10.
So from my perspective, I'm sitting there, and Rich reminded me. He was like, we're doing the podcast tonight, right? And I'm like, yeah, absolutely. And then you're like, okay, well, I can do 7:30, I think, but I'm sitting on the side of the highway with no tire. And I was just like, oh, that's a Carucci day.
Yeah. But they took the car. They brought it to the police. I had to go to motor vehicle earlier in the day with my son and pay for his registration, get all that done. We go to the ghetto because they don't care. We went to the ghetto to do it because they don't care. You don't need the 5 points. They could give a shit less. We put down that I paid $100 for the car. They're like, that's a lie. I go, it doesn't work. Everybody's laughing about it. No one cares.
So that's a trick. If
you
need a fake title, go to the ghetto. Pat, you got any fake tricks like that?
No, but what I'm going to do, Bobby, is because of my skill here, we're going to do Rich, you're now going to learn how we do this show. In your story, the first part, not the part with the car, who's the piece of shit in Rich's story? Here are the options I'm going to give you.
Right.
Is it Rich for going, well, I wasn't on the show, so I think I'm going to drink and just fucking get hammered and make this guy, he got to do all the talking, he gets to do all the driving? Is it the other comic for being an asshole and not talking to you, not understanding you were upset, but also, and we don't know the answer, I'm just saying, for not fighting for you to perform? I've gone with people, and that's happened to me when my opening act was told, hey, we don't have time for him. I've said either cut my fucking time, let him do 10, he came, or extend the show, you're going to be fucking okay, or any way to make sure that the other person gets to perform because they took a ride of that nature. Is it the venue or the people that booked it for seeing you showing up and having the balls to say, fuck you? They knew how far you drove. I'm sure you told them. And they're like, they got all the way there and now you don't do it. I mean, maybe they still paid for the hotel. If that was on them, then at least they took care of you in that regard. Isn't the hotel for obviously stealing your $1,200 necklace? That is gone. That's West Virginia. They've now bought 2 new mountains with that money. Like that's huge money up there. Isn't Sheets for selling bootleg wine? Why would I get Sheets is fun, but you're selling bootleg wine and giving people like you a chance to do that? Or is it you for owning a robe? Bobby, who's the piece of shit in the story?
I need to ask one point for clarification, quick, Rich. Did you agree with the guy ahead of time that you were going to drive back? Was that part of the arrangement?
As we were driving there, he started mentioning, he goes, since the trip was so long, he started saying, hey, we might leave right after the show. And I'm like, okay. Why? And he goes, I got something to do at 3:00. And I was like, oh, he was like, I got to set up for the show tomorrow night at 3 p.m. But I still thought I was performing on it. And I'm like, hey. But then when we got there, I was starting to get upset. But also, this is what pissed him off. The next day, he's cleaning out his car and he finds one of those bottles empty of Johnny Bootlegger. And he was pissed. He's like, what a douchebag move. And I go, yeah, almost as douchey as having me come with you and not perform. And that's what he said. We're not going to talk anymore for a while. And I go, yep, that's probably a good thing.
One more question. Had this venue seen you perform before?
No,
okay.
They didn't know I was coming. It was a wedding party. They were going to have the wedding the next day. So this was the wedding party was there, and they went to dinner. They were having drinks. They rented the place to have a party, and they hired him. They knew him, so they hired him to do it. And he goes, come with me. I'll pay you. So, and then I told him to shove the money up his ass, so I never took the money anyway. So
I like that move a lot. I'm a fan of it. For that, I'm going to say it's him then. If these people know you,
we'll get your opinion.
Yeah, we'll go to you next, Rich. If these people know you or know the headliner and hired him, and he comes and goes, I brought this guy to do time. You let him do time. It's the headliner's move. He knows what makes a good show. You're hiring him to put on a show. If he goes, this is the show I brought, you let it go. Now, if one of these people had seen you and were like, I don't want this on my wedding, I don't like him, he used to fuck the bride, or you know what I mean, something like that, then okay, there's extenuating circumstances, but stick up for your boys.
Yeah.
Rich, who do you think the piece of shit is in your story?
Definitely me.
Okay. Yeah.
Definitely me. And I totally. And I felt bad at first till I realized I left my chain there and it disappeared. Then I didn't feel bad anymore. But it was me. And I think it was because I did a show the week before with him. And it was like 100 bikers, dudes with the jackets on and everything, like at American Legion. And I went up before him to do 25 minutes, and I was filthy, and I was goof. I knew who I could mess with in the audience, so I was pretty brutal to them, and they were digging it.
Yeah.
So he might have thought I was going to do that. He might have just canceled me himself. I don't know, and he might have just brought me with the intent to have me drive. I'm not sure.
Now, I don't think, in my opinion, you're not the piece of shit. Now, yes. You did what a comic would do. I'm pissy. I can't perform. I'll show you. We're children. You added a little tantrum. I'll drink and make sure I can't do anything. I get that. Now, I also don't think it's him. And Bobby, here's why. I don't know exactly how he got the gig, but what it sounds like is there's a couple of services. One's called Gig Salad. There's things like that where they'll put a thing out going, in the area you live in, here's the thing. And you go to it. It says like, we need a comic for 45 minutes at a wedding on this day. You need to provide sound or this or that. You put in your bid. They do the bid. They do whatever. I've taken those gigs sometimes, and then I, on my own, decide to bring a second comic because they're doing that. They don't have the real communication with that kind of stuff. So this comic might have said, hey, they're not going to care. I've done it in the past. When they show up, they're probably like, hey, we got to cut the time. If it's a wedding type thing, we got speeches, we got this, we got that. There might be a reason why with everything going up. So at least that comic did say, hey, I was willing to take care of my buddy, have him do a gig. We're going to go out and do something. It could have led to something better. So at least he had the attempt to do it.
When you say it like that, I get what you're saying. My bad.
If it's that, it might not be that, but I'm saying it's that. But it might, I don't even think it's the venue because that's on them. They don't know Rich is coming. They already got a thing. They don't really know the first guy. Maybe some people got cold feet. It's a wedding thing. Someone thinks comedy's fine, but the other people, mothers and stuff, might go, they're going to have jokes. They're going to make fun of us. They're going to call me fat because she's obviously fat because there's going to be someone fat there who's mad. And they're like, they see Rich come in. They're like, well, he's not going to juggle. He's going to shit on us. He's the goddamn steamroller. So like he's already smelling like sheets. They know it's going to be a bad time. He's wearing a robe. They don't know what's going on.
That man reeks of bootleg liquor. Right. And Mom, he's known as the steamroller. This is not a good move.
The piece of shit in this story is the person who decided we need comedy at a wedding event. It's not ever happened. I've done it. It never works. It's never good. I've done bachelor parties, stuff like that. You should never do it. So to do that, you know it's going to be a nightmare. Yes, he was good for your buddy to give you the money and all that stuff. But I also think part two is I think that your buddy has your necklace. I think that he got it. It's in the car. You left it in there. You're not talking. A week from now, he's going to go, oh, by the way, I talked to the hotel and I got this for you, asshole. But he had it the whole time. You left it in the car.
He might. He's a magician.
Oh, God.
Oh, fucking.
Bobby.
Yeah.
Bad
Bobby
people,
hates
Rich.
comedic magicians.
Bad people.
Yeah. And a ventriloquist. So he does all that. And he was still mad. I once locked him out of his truck, which made him angry. And he was, and I kept going, hey, you're a ventriloquist. You can't 1, 2, 3, both the car door open. So,
well, a magician. I don't think a ventriloquist would make the trunk talk. And go,
well, he's a magician too. Yeah, he's a magician, ventriloquist, and comedian. So he does it all.
You know what, Rich? I didn't realize that. He's the piece of shit because you're the only comedian on that show.
Yeah.
When you have to do other shit. You took a 9-hour ride or whatever, a 6-hour ride with a comedic magician. I'm surprised you didn't kill yourself.
9 hours there, 6 hours back. Oh.
And it's important to note, you told a story last week that while we were actually talking about a Carucci gig about Otto and George, Pat, where Otto or George in the back seat kept talking shit, and then they put it in the trunk. He was like, "Hey, let me out."
Yeah.
I'm just picturing
Otto driving with Johnny Rizzo, and he kept making George fucking talk shit. So Johnny took him, threw him in the trunk, and they said, "Shut that fucking guy up." But then he kept talking from the trunk, being
hey,
he couldn't even pull that off. So it's like
that's it. Rizzo has the shrunken head usually, so that's.
But
now he's selling Catholic candles. That he's got paintings of Yoda on and shit. He sells them in gas stations and at his shows.
He had the mugs. He had the mugs he was painting for a while.
And crabs. So what you call it, like horseshoe crabs. He gets from the beach. He paints them and then sells that after. Because I'm a maniac.
It's at least a unique piece of merch. But the only reason I brought that up was the only way it would be acceptable then for him is if there was a dickhead in the back seat and it was like, you know what, Rich, drinking instead of driving is a real me move right now.
Yeah, and turning down the hotel is dumb. As comics, you're happy when you get shit like that. It's just like you don't. If you have 2 gigs, you don't do that. You don't take that one. Who takes a gig? Because you're spending money to go there to do whatever. I don't know who took her to the hotel, but either way, driving all that way to drive back, turn around, do another 3 o'clock gig. That's insanity. Like that's taking on too much. You should almost just take that second gig, take part of the money and throw it to someone else and just take a vig out of the goddamn thing. You know what I mean?
He was just going to set up for the other one at 3. It was going to be at night, but we still could have left 6 a.m. and still made it for him to get home at 3.
Well, what's his setup?
He said he takes his time. He sets up backdrop. He sets up the stands for the puppets, the sound.
He's got a whole van that's wrapped with his.
Oh, so
I'm slowly figuring out who this is, and the penis puppet was a clue to make sure it was him.
Right.
Yeah.
You got him.
But he's got the whole van wrapped and everything. It's like this guy is a one-man entertainment show on wheels, which is why it's weird he invited Rich along with him.
He wanted me to take the ride with him. That's basically
pretty much what it came down to.
He wanted me to bring blow.
Oh, wow. I didn't realize.
I did years ago. This is 12 years ago because the guy's dead now. But there was a comic out in New Jersey, Dennis Ross. Do you remember Dennis?
Yeah, of course.
Great guy. I mean, when I first started, he was the kind of guy that would. Dennis, Bobby, you'd like Dennis because Dennis was a good joke writer, but also didn't give a shit because he got much fatter. So he would wear a button-down shirt and then sweatpants, and then tuck the button-down shirt into the sweatpants with sneakers and sit on a stool. Yeah, it was crazy. And he just had a million jokes all the time. And he was cool to newer comics. He did it like the old school style. He knew I was putting on some shows in Connecticut. He wanted to headline them. So he would hire me to host or open for him, throw me a couple bucks to do. I get to leave the state. I'm all excited. And in return, he gets to do a gig for me. It's a way we always rubbed each other's backs in a kind of way in comedy.
It's never a spoken thing, but it's just you each did the right thing.
Dennis spoke it.
Oh,
Dennis
okay.
would flat out
That's
say
even
to you,
better.
This
That
is what we're doing.
That's awesome. I really like that.
He had me. I was in Connecticut. I drove to Jersey, and then from Jersey we drove to West Virginia. To a bar, not a venue, not a back room, not a banquet hall, a fucking bar where we drove all that way. And then we stood in front of a pool table. They let them keep playing pool. The jukebox was on, and we did jokes as you heard the ball going into the holes. And he's trying to tell his jokes and everything. And then turned around, no hotel, drove all the way fucking back. And I got back home at like 5 a.m. So I get that gig. And if I went all that way, and I was mad because the gig sucked. We were both like, what the fuck was that? If I didn't get to perform, I would have lost my mind as well.
Yeah, Dennis was a road warrior like that. He would do that stuff, drove everywhere, get pulled over constantly by the cops because he drove so bad. He wasn't a drinker, didn't party. No. He was a horrible driver, and he never wore socks. I remember that. He never
wore socks, sneakers, no socks, sweatpants, button-down shirt, big old glasses, couldn't see worth a shit.
Right.
Like just an awful vision. Great guy.
Like Mr. Magoo. That's what I remember him driving. And he's married Deb. His wife was really cool too. Sweetheart. When he passed away. Really nice guy.
Yeah, he was a good. I remember that year or two. It was like I would do shows with him, Phil Selman, and Davin Rosenblatt. Those are three names I never had to say again. But at that time, those were guys that would come and do that same thing. But Dennis was the one who was like, I'm not trying to shit on the other two, but like the nicest guy of them all. The other ones were comics that trying to do their thing. Dennis became like friendly with me and like cared about shit, would reach out and say hi for no reason. He was a good dude, but that drive was insane. And the best part was Dennis was a joke writer. So we're driving all the way there. I'm in the back seat. His wife took the ride because they had family in the area. So they were going to go, whatever. So the three of us went. And then, so we get there, on our way there, there's a Maxim magazine in the back seat. And I'm bored and I'm reading the Maxim magazine. And at one point, I put it down, whatever, we go do the show. Dennis tells some jokes. One joke sounds real fucking familiar to me. And we're riding the way back. I start thumbing through the Maxim again. The same exact joke is in the Maxim magazine.
Of course.
So as we're riding back, we're getting tired. We're running out of things to talk about. And we kept going through towns where the radio stations kept, with radio. So the radio station would keep changing from the areas you drove through. But every time it came to a new area, that fucking Lady Gaga Poker Face was the big song. And that kept coming on, and we're just hearing it, poker. So it was making me so insane tired. The show sucked, all that. Dennis said something about, he was giving me advice, kind of like, hey, you should work on this or work on that. And I'm like, you shouldn't do jokes from this fucking magazine in the back. And he's like, he looks at me, he goes, excuse me? I go, it's in this joke. He goes, someone must have heard me tell it and sent it in. You know what? You can have that one. Rest in peace, my friend.
That's awesome.
Yeah, that's right. He was so happy when you could get the radio in the car with a Sirius radio, and he didn't have to worry about, because he would drive to Saskatchewan. That guy would drive everywhere. He messaged me. He goes, "Hey, I was having him do Joker's Wild because he was a good guy. He's funny. He would do his time. It'd be great." And he was going to do the weekend. He goes, "I should be there right when the show starts. I have a gig in Ohio, and it ends at like 5 p.m. on Thursday, and I got to do this and then drive here." And like, what the fuck? Like his schedule, it was all just him, and he did all those road gig things. He would just go online and just take everything, and he'd build his own little tour. So he's like, oh, I have a show in Big Sky Country, so I better get one in Ohio, one in Michigan, and just drive all the way through and do a gig in a bar, make the money for the gas to keep going, come back flat. You know what I mean? Like, you're not making money off that.
Yeah.
He was a road warrior.
That's awesome. And you learn, like, when you find out, like, guys like Joey Diaz, Landau did that for a while, who figured out, like, how to map it and all the like creative design that goes into it. Like, all right, it's this many miles between roads, gas is this expensive, I'm getting paid this much, you know what I mean? That you're like, oh, there's so much more to this than just telling jokes. I was delivery.
The networking is the biggest part because he needed people like me in Connecticut and then another version of me in Massachusetts and a Rich somewhere else and all these guys that you become friendly with, but also knew, hey, I'm going through that area again. I need a gig. So in 2 months, I better hit up Pat and hopefully he can get me something. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
Yeah, he was good with that. I set up to a gig one time, and it was at an old folks place, and the guy that booked me was like 80 something years old. So Dennis did the gig, and I called the guy on the Monday. I go, hey, Frank, how was the gig? And he goes, listen, he goes, because Dennis brought a magician with him, some guy that was hanging out with him, put extra on the show, paid him from his money, because I said, this is what it pays. And Dennis went there, and the guy goes, everything was good, but the second guy who went on looked like he needed medical attention. And this is coming from an 80-something-year-old guy.
That's pretty funny.
Yeah, Dennis always listen, I'm not shitting on him anyway. Wonderful guy, like we said, but nobody was shocked when he died. Like, because Dennis was not in good health in any way, but just loved comedy. And you could tell he was one of those guys that like struggled. He was a smart guy, could have had a day job that took care of him, but he loved comedy so much that that's what his goal was in life to be. And he'd be happier being poor and traveling and struggling and doing whatever than ever just working a 9 to 5. So.
Yep, absolutely. And Davin Rosenblatt, I just came back. I was in the Bahamas at Atlantis for 2 weeks with him, opening for him in Atlantis.
That's
which
awesome.
was great. He hooked me up with that.
Nice.
Rich,
I've talked about him before. I'm sorry, Bobby, cutting you off, but I want to mention that you'll know that name. I haven't said his name, but I told you about Davin when I first started. There was a comic who had merchandise for every joke he fucking told.
Yes.
He has a whole table like QVC. It's insane. And he told a joke on stage and then went, damn it, out loud. And I looked at that like, what? Like, he's holding the mic and he turns to me during his set and goes, I forgot that merch. Like, he was mad he did a joke that he didn't have a thing to sell with. So you can walk out with like 20 bumper stickers and like a hat and pins for every single joke the fucker told.
That's great.
Yeah, 5 different shirts. I call him the infomercial.
Yeah, it's insane. Like, he's literally at the end when he's done headlining, you have to go back as the host and talk for 5 minutes so we can set up shop.
Mm-hmm. That was my job. That was my job in Bahamas. I ran out with his stuff, got it up for him, and then he came out. But we had a great week, 2 weeks of killing. He sold a lot of merch. It was great.
The audience loves him.
That was my job on all the comedians, the compound tours too, was to set up the merch. And so then like you do gigs with other people, and like I was helping their host, like it was a show that I was hosting on, but a guy came with him, and so he did a guest spot. And he's like, no, you just throw it out here like this. And I had to be like, no, trust me. I'm a pro. This is how we do it by size. You got to fold the shirt like this to show everything. By the end of the day, you should work for like a retail corporation.
Same thing here. I had to set it up. I'm like, no, you put the CDs in the middle, the shirts over here, the bumper sticker, the fake condoms.
We put the hoodies on the outside just to lure them in, soften them up a bit. Nobody's buying the hoodies.
I'm happy I never got into that world. I don't fucking do merch. I'll just shake their hands and that's it. Once I'm done selling my soul on the stage, I can't sell other shit afterwards. I just can't. But more power to those guys. That's how they make their money on the road. That's gas. You know what I mean? That's
Absolutely. What they're doing. I had shirts. Then I got drunk and gave my wife, how much did you make on the shirts? I'm like, well, I kind of got drunk and I was giving them away. You know, 3 months later, I had no shirts and I just kept giving them away.
That's
awesome.
I forget who I heard say it, but somebody was like giving people a hard time for selling merch, and somebody was like, well, that might be the difference between a hotel and your car for the night.
Yeah.
Like, it might be make or break on the road. So I get that.
Now, were either of you two ever given money for selling the merch?
No.
I always just kind of looked at it as part of the job.
Oh, I'm not saying in a bad way. I'm just asking because there was a comic. He's still a comic, a very funny guy, Rich Carucci. And for a while, Rich is awesome. Rich used to open for Craig Schumacher, who would do the whole, like, the Love Master, baby. And he would go out and all that stuff. And listen, this is just me saying it. You two are covered. Rich, I think you know me a little bit. I have never afraid to talk shit about someone, whatever. Craig Schumacher was an asshole. Like, when they were at King of the Foxes and did things, Craig was mean. He thought he was the most famous guy in the world. He's kind of rich, hilarious, great guy. So it was like they would come together and he opened for him. Well, a big part of Rich's job is that Rich would have to set up the merch, do all that stuff, but Rich also had to travel on his own with all the stuff. So Craig made him carry his sell his things, and then gave him like a percentage. So he had to become a salesman more than his act. And he literally would only do like 10 or 15 minutes. Craig would do an hour or something. So he's traveling around just basically being his salesman. And then when Craig was done, he would leave the stage, make Rich go back up and talk about and like sell the things on stage first. You buy this, and then Craig would grab a microphone, do the Love Doctor voice, and shit on Rich. Like, look at this loser over here. Like, so he's making up, and you can see Rich being so mad, like, fuck. Like, why do you do this? He goes, because when I do 15 minutes, everyone's like, you should be doing more time. And I go to these clubs, they feel bad for me, and I come back as the headliner. I'm like,
that's a dope move.
Yeah.
You can take the beating. It works out well. So he got his pay, and he earned it because Rich is awesome. But crazy.
Yeah.
You were talking about people.
Videos.
What videos?
He does these dance videos now, Aronovich. Rich. They're pretty cool.
Yeah, he does stuff with Jessica Kershaw too, right? Like they do some videos and things. Yeah. Oh,
That's
Rich
awesome.
is so talented. Yeah.
We were just talking earlier about people who love comedy, and that's why I like you so much, Rich. Like you've taken me to some of my most fun gigs and some of the hellest gigs, but no matter what, we have a blast together. Like I always know it's going to be a good time. I think I talked about it on here, the one where there were two guys at the bar who just refused to turn around and make eye contact with any of the comedians, but just like Conti's in the back, Crescenzo, I should kill myself and you hear you guys busting up. It's always a good time. And the shows you throw at the Bullseye are just what they're the comedy shows I heard about on the radio growing up that made me want to be a comedian. Just guys you've never heard of, like Steve Marshall, who just come out and do crowd work for 30 minutes and kill without using a mic. That, you're never going to see him on Jimmy Fallon or anything, but arguably he's funnier than half the fucks you see on there.
Absolutely. Yeah, that was a great night. Everybody did great. It was such weird. Everybody was so different. Their styles and everything.
Yeah,
and it was like,
it was awesome.
It's just, they loved it. That was their favorite one. They said, I've been doing them there for years.
Yeah. I mean, it's my favorite show every year. The Wednesday or the Thursday before Christmas, the Otto and George tribute. It doesn't get better than that. Sorry to just suck his dick for a minute there, Pat.
I didn't know you were sucking his dick. I thought it was good comedy time. I didn't realize you were trying to get booked again.
No, not at all. Not at all.
Available.
No, not at all. For a lot of people, we were talking before the show, in comedy know who Rich is, but a lot of people who outside of comedy may not know you from Adam. So pointing out that you've probably touched the careers of more famous comedians than anybody along the way, because you're the guy who's like, yeah, if you'll show up and do time, I'll give you a spot, man. Just to come have fun and don't be a dickhead.
That's how I know. If I go, they either died or got famous, because then I don't see them anymore. I'm at that same thing in the middle, in the trenches, and then I don't see anybody for a while, but I'll see them like on something, or they just disappear.
Yeah.
And
a lot of them just go into weird comedy retirement. They don't really go anywhere anymore. The kind of guys that they stay in their one little circle, but they know that it's just smarter to stay at the local VFW and tell jokes there every 2 months to the spaghetti dinner people that like their jokes, rather than bust their hump any farther. Yeah. I don't think I'll ever be that way. I love comedy too much where I will continue writing new things and putting out new stuff constantly and just keep trying to travel to new places, because I want to just tell jokes everywhere until I die. Like
I was going to say this, Pat, you're the same way. Like, you know how few comedians go to open mics and want to talk about jokes with other people? Like, you are in that group. You're excited for other people. You're like, oh, this is great. Let's work on this together.
The only language I like to talk is comedy.
Yeah, that's why you're great. You love comedy. Same with you, Rich. You would set up you set up that show at a strip club during the pandemic.
Oh, yeah.
Like, you made it work. You were out there with Pat, you were the same way. We did the podcast. We got things going. Like, it's fun to be around people who just.
I would never
comedy.
be the same way and do a comedy show at a strip club. I did that once. It's fucking awful. But like, how'd that go?
We were there for over a year. I mean, we were on there. We started, I think, Thursday nights, and then we went to Saturday. Some of them we'd get audiences. It'd be great. It was funny because I would we were in a tent behind. It's not even a good stripper bar. It's like a shithole. Yeah. I mean, we used to say Corona's the least of your worries here. That's what we used to say. The girls all had these outfits that they would get made, but they were like short, stumpy, just busted up, and all the backdrops when I take pictures.
I hope that was their stripper names. This is short and this is stumpy.
Yeah. I would take pictures of the comics, and their backdrop, because the bar was behind them, like this rollout bar, is these giant chicks in fishnet stockings, their big asses. So it was we had fun.
It's like someone caught a whale. It just in fishnet.
It was fun to watch how the weather affected that show, because in the summer, people would be out. It would be great. Then the minute it got cold and the choice became indoors with the strippers or outdoors with the comics, people would show up for the comedy show and just go up inside, end up inside.
It was funny during the summer. Sometimes you'd show up to do the show like 7 o'clock, and all the the strippers are coked out of their minds, and they're sitting in the back, and the back looks like a harem tent, like your tent with all this, with the stripper furniture, the furry furniture all outside. And every time we showed up, there'd be something different in the tent. There'd be a go-go cage. There'd be a TV thing. The tables be set up different. Every time you came, there'd be a new bar built. And it was just, you never knew what to expect. I mean, you'd get into it with the strippers and go back and forth. They'd be coked out and angry.
Yeah. I was going to say, everything you explained is cocaine. Like, if you walk to a tent and it's rearranged every month, cocaine is what the reason why that's happening.
Absolutely. And it was totally illegal. We weren't even supposed to be back there. I remember being back there, and there's people inside. This during Corona. There's actual people inside, but it looks like it's closed because you had to sneak around the back. And somebody set off the fire alarm. They had a cook there that had I used to say, the last thing this guy cooked was on a spoon. You know, he starts a fire. The fire alarm goes off. All of a sudden, the people inside that are illegally in there was come running out into the tent, and we're out there. I'm like, "Oh, right, hey, everybody's coming out." They're like, shut up! The cops are at the door. The cops are at the door, and I'm just busting people's balls. I won't shut up. I'm on the speaker. It was just nuts. You never knew what to expect there.
What's great about that too is if you are the police and you're dealing with in height of COVID and when people have other problems staying in, if I got called to a strip club and you went and saw all that and in the back saw a comedy show, you'd almost be like, fuck this, I'm going home. Like, I wouldn't even say, I'd just be like, that's the whatever, at least they're not killing anybody. Let them do that. Like,
it's Hackensack, New Jersey, so let's be honest, if the cops did show up to bust up the show and they came out back, it'd be like, oh, hey, Rich, what's up? You didn't tell us you had a gig here tonight.
Yeah,
because you know, like every cop.
The owner was a cop in that town. He got fired for mob ties. So that's why, and he owned the club, but he didn't own it under his name. There was no guy running it though. So, you know, it was totally crazy shit going on, gambling, drugs, prostitution. I used to say dick jokes in the back, human trafficking in the front. You know?
That's how we opened the show.
By the way, Jersey has to be happy Florida exists, because if it didn't, that's what Jersey is, the thing where you're like, okay, that makes sense anywhere else. You just said that like it was normal. Like, he was a cop and he got fired for mafia ties, so now he owns a strip club. That's not a regular thing.
Right. Yeah, no, he's my spirit animal. He was always built in school. I went to school with the guy. We met when we got in trouble. We went to juvie together, and we went to school together. And he was always built, hated drugs, was anti-drug. Now he's like snorting coke, banging 20-year-olds, eating Viagra like they're freaking M&Ms. You know, I'm like,
he's making up for lost time.
Oh, I'm like, what happened? He swelled up so much, I didn't even know it was him. I was sneaking up behind him one day, and his head was swollen. He looked like a bad guy from like an Avengers movie. I'm like, oh my God. You know, he's just, I never saw him fat before. And I'm like, oh my God, this is killing you.
By the way, the next time I run into somebody who's gained weight, I'm going to say, I've never seen you fat before. That is my new way of greeting someone who's heavy. I didn't recognize her. Never saw you as fat before. So.
Yeah. We did a show a couple of months ago outside, but we did it under the tent just as like a reunion show. Do another one, it's going to be like October, November.
But it's funny how people don't really understand the sickness, which is comedy, because when COVID happened, the withdrawals we all went through. I mean, I performed the last week of March, even like one past when most people were. I had one more gig in upstate New York and the place was cool with it, so we did it. I didn't perform again till early June. And for me, and I talked to a lot of people, they're like, whoa, that's even sooner than a lot of people got to. I was lucky to get some gigs again, but even going 2 months was the longest I had gone in my 15 years of doing comedy.
Yeah.
In the need that we needed. It's funny how people romanticize it. They're like, oh, in New York, they were on rooftops. Or across the country, they were at drive-ins. You guys were in a tent behind a strip club. You're here. It wasn't romantic. We're addicts. We had to perform. We didn't know what to do with ourselves, and we didn't have this outlet to do it. So thank God there's so many of us. So it makes sense when someone's like, well, what are you doing, Rich, with a cokehead with a giant head owning a strip club? We both have diseases. Like, well, mine's comedy and his is every fucking vice possible. It's the same shit.
I snuck out of the house for the first time since like high school to go do the Pink Flamingo, because my parents were like, we're still a little risky, and I was like, all right, yeah, I'm just gonna go out for a bit, and then just drove to see Rich.
you had to see how many comics came just because, and they were so happy to come just because they needed to be around it. So each show I had, tons of comics would show up. We had comics coming from like a Boston area, all over up there.
Because there wasn't show. Massachusetts was real shut down. Connecticut, I mean, one of the guys, Matt Mead and guys like that, the Secret Show shit, that was cool. They started doing that. But then Ryan Brouth in Connecticut contacted all the breweries because he was doing shows with them anyway, but they all had outdoor venue parts. So he was putting on comedy shows, and he was getting like guys from New York who were national headliners working his breweries because they needed gigs. And like comedy started to come back again, and people got excited. And that's when we started to like get worried because like, oh shit, now it's getting so big being outside that the government's going to get involved and go, it's too much.
Yeah.
And separating people was a tough thing. You're asking bar owners and comedians to know about science that was just made up. Like, it's like, what really is 6 feet? No one's bringing a ruler with them. You're just putting it close enough. But as a comic, you're like, I don't want them far away. It's a disconnect, but you need to have it. It was strange, but it was beautiful at the same time.
I booked a lot of different venues though. I went through like 40 different venues because I would do these we did the drive-in comedy. We had a couple of those over the radio. We did some of those, and I was doing these cigar lounges outside. We were doing parking lots, and the first show was always like we'd get a few people. First show was like, some people. Second show would always be mobbed at every venue, and the cops would come and shut us down every time. So I had to keep moving. I did like 40 different venues. The stripper bar, no one ever messed with. We were allowed to do. We could have killed a stripper there, and no one would have cared.
There was a fist fight.
They might have cared if you killed the stripper, but I know.
They had a place you could bury in the back. They set it up like a beach. They had a volleyball thing. I'm telling you, it was nuts.
Yeah, one show there was just a guy in like a blow up bikini suit that was like playing music out in the beach, and I don't think anybody invited him.
Bikini suit?
Like those like wrestling like costume.
Oh, like the sumo blow up.
Yeah, but it was like a skinny. But it was skinny. Okay. It was a skinny chick in theory, but like And I don't think anybody invited him. I think he just showed up and decided he was going to play music.
That guy was showed up dressed as Biden with monkey tits and was playing the bongos. It would just, and people would go to me. They're like doing a thing by the stage, and he would just show up and go around them. They would look at me, and I would just like shrug my shoulders, like, I don't know.
Why did Biden have monkey tits? What is that correlation?
He just would come with weird stuff on it. He would just play drums and dance around, and then he would disappear and go inside the strip club, come back, and I call the guy, does he work here? He goes, no, he just shows up like that. I go, all right, whatever.
Did he pay admission?
He would just come in and then go into the.
You don't charge that guy.
No, just do whatever he did. Nobody cared. He was part of the entertainment.
Pat, how old are you picturing this guy?
I don't know how old.
Me, I would say 45, 50 years old.
It's like 60s, late 60s.
Yeah. It's not a young man's game.
No, I just want to make sure you weren't thinking like it was like a young.
Oh
guy.
No, a young guy wouldn't do suits and monkey tits. He would just be shirtless and have shit drawn on him. The older you get, the more props you get. Very depending on what area you live in, either very Paul Veneer or very Fred Stone. Like whichever guy who carries a trunk full of shit and performs on stage type thing.
Yep. That's what he would do. Just pull all this weird shit up. I have videos of him that are great. That just people are like, what? I go, he wasn't with us. I don't even know his name. He would just show up and do his thing and then change, come back out. But he would go inside the strip club, and as the strippers were on stage, he would go up there too, doing his thing. And
they let him dance up there?
Just do his thing and then hang it. The owner was just cool with it. He's like, I don't know. He just comes here. He's like,
he's just cool with it. It's obviously a mental illness. They're like, he's our mascot. It's fine.
It was good to know the cops would deal with him first, though, if they busted it up. You'd have time to get away while they were dealing with Monkey Titso Biden.
They never messed with us once there. I could never. But they would come there off duty, some of them, to party on the nights when there wasn't comedy. So,
And Bobby, if you're wondering why Rich has video of this guy, it's because Davin Rosenblatt's going to sell a best of video after he shows it.
Right.
That I do that. It's funny if somebody doesn't do comedy, listen to these stories, they'd go, well, that sounds awful. Why would you perform there? But I'll tell you, every comic listening is going to hit up Rich and go, do you still book that tent? I want to.
They do.
Of course they do, because it sounds like a fucking crazy gig that would be fun. The stories about the gig would be better than the gig. They'd ask you how the crowd was. Like, I don't even remember how the show went. but the before, the after, monkey tits. I mean, that's the lovely shit about this comedy. Now we all get to meet. To me, I always said the two things that bring all types of people together are weed and comedy. Because there's people I know in life only through comedy or when I smoked weed in college because we had that one thing and we would have never sat in the same room. But like you get together with people, and they all get to enjoy these things. Some of the best people I ever met and the worst people I ever met is from comedy, but we all share the same crazy illness that makes you end up in a tent with monkey tits. We're calling him crazy, and that guy's going, I'm crazy. Why are they here? We shouldn't be outside. They got a venue set up so I can be monkey tits.
I like how you said the two things that bring people together are drugs and comedy, because Carucci deals both.
Yes.
That's what I was saying.
To be fair, I said weed. I heroin, it's you never get a fat guy. Like, you know what I mean? So like you kind of want to, I made sure it was weed in that.
But by the end of the night, we're in the back hanging out, smoking weed. The strippers are with us, smoking with us. Then they're passing around lines. So that is, we're hanging out.
It'll get there eventually.
Oh, yeah. Most nights, that's why I was glad it kind of ended. Because I'm like, I'm way too old for this shit. Like, this is me 30 years ago. Now I'm back doing it. I'm like, nah, this is getting out of hand.
Yeah, me, I don't drink. I don't smoke. I smoke weed occasionally. That's about it. But like, I don't drink or anything. So for me, that's a fun watch in like watching everyone do shit. And then I'm gone about a half hour after the show, but it was enough to go, I have a nice story. It'll turn into a bit for me later. So I even appreciate watching the train wrecks, which is that kind of stuff afterwards.
Yeah, they had a great Christmas party too for the employees, and we were in some of the guys that booked the comedy. Me and two other people were allowed to come. They had midgets. They had a midget Donald Trump, a midget Black Santa. There was a band. They were giving away like little, when you walked in, they gave you little tiny bags of Coke. They're like, do you do Coke? It's like, I do tonight. And they were just handing you little bags of Coke, free drinks.
Well, to them, it was a regular size bag of Coke.
I was like, this is great. I had to pass out in the parking lot that night. I thought I drove home. I never left. I was on the side. I drove from the front of the building to the side of the building and fell asleep in the car at like 3 a.m.
I wonder how the midget outfits work. Someone showed up with midget outfits, and he's like, the black guy's there and go, wait, there's a Trump one and a Santa one. I can't be either one of those. It's like, it makes more sense to be Santa.
I guess so, yeah.
Trump would never be black. Santa could be. You never know. And that's also going to be weird to be the midget to take that gig. It's just like, it's how much do you pay him? What do midgets get? Have you ever booked a midget?
I don't know, but the Donald Trump guy looked like him, had the wig, and he was handing out these fake $100. They were like metal. They looked gold. And then they had that thing where you, like on a game show, where you get in and all the dollar bills blow around. And
they had
one of those set up and shit.
Nice.
Crazy.
I love the guy who's got that stuff. He's just like, Bobby, he's just showing you, yeah, I got the tank. I got the bouncy house. I got the midgets. What do you need? He's got like a tier. You go on his website. You pick the stuff you want.
Free Coke. I mean, what's that?
Yes, free Coke. Go ahead, Bobby.
I don't think you have to pay them much. Apparently, the Lollipop Guild made less than Toto in The Wizard of Oz, the dog.
Oh, I thought you were going to say that was like their Screen Actors Guild, like it protects them.
That would be a great union name. I was going to say that, but then I got a little nervous that there would be a...
Only a little nervous. But like that, I was at... Rich, have you ever been to City Steam in Connecticut?
Yeah.
Okay, so you know that downstairs, like the big room there, lower ceilings. I was just there a couple weeks ago, and before the show started, a guy walks down, and it's like 3 layers. Bobby, you've been there. You've been in the upstairs part.
Yeah.
So upstairs they had karaoke going. They have all these levels of place. They have all this entertainment going on. The guy from karaoke walked downstairs and was looking around, and I thought he was someone coming to the show. I'm like, can I help you? And he's like, oh no, I'm just looking. I do karaoke upstairs, but I also book midget wrestling. And I'm like, oh, I like those are the 2 things you do. And I go, why are you looking down here? He goes, we're thinking about maybe trying to bring midget wrestling here. And that ceiling's a little lower. And I'm like, can you do it in here? He goes, they're little. They're not that little. That was but just my eye if they could wrestle there or not.
I think it's a great gig. They treated you like gold there. You got the
meal. Still do.
And like 4, the last booker used to book me, and it's funny, his name would change. I think the last name he had was something Gator, and he booked it for a while. So for years I was doing it. Then another booker took over.
Yeah, when they shut down, did all that stuff, they kind of change over things. And now the guy I mentioned, Ryan Brouth, whose family runs comics at Mohegan, Ryan books it now. And it's the management's still similar. The guy Brian, who was the bartender and would do like, "Hey, ladies and gentlemen, come to the stage." He's still there doing all that shit. They're playing the Whaler music. They got manager now, Chris, of the bar and the restaurant, is a great guy and loves comedy. But like Ryan's booking a little bit differently in a way, that Jack, Gator Jack, all the names he did.
Yeah,
I got to be there the one time that Jack was a comic, everyone said, but no one ever met Jack. But Jack showed, you did, I met him once too, and he showed up.
With him.
He does Robin Williams. It's the greatest impression I've ever seen in my life. It's dead on. I mean, not dead on. Of course, that he's dead now, but it was just accurate Robin Williams. It was incredible how good it was.
It's just him. He pulls out a bed, ties the belt around it and around his neck, and he's like, Robin Williams.
Yeah.
Did you believe he killed him, Robin Williams? Listen, if you're Robin Williams, you kill yourself after Popeye, not Miss Doubtfire. You know what I mean? Like,
well, I think wasn't Popeye first?
Yeah, that's when you kill yourself.
He knew he was like, in his mind, he had to be like, Popeye's going to be huge.
Yeah, it was horrible.
Right. No, I mean, listen, we can get into all that stuff. I know a ton of comics that we all think are doing well. And I think they had a good gig. And I've thought to myself, man, this should be your Miss Doubtfire. You should kill yourself now.
It seems to be getting worse for me. I should have jumped in the ocean and drowned myself in the Bahamas, because that was like, I was having a great run, Delaware, Bahamas. Now it's fucking West Virginia, goddamn Long Island, some other shithole.
You wouldn't have died, though, because Davin also sells life preservers, and he would have thrown one out and be like, aha, now you owe me $25.
I had him drinking and everything. He doesn't even drink.
You got him drinking?
I had him drinking. He would, not a lot, but he had a couple of beers.
Yeah, you're a terrible influence.
I am.
I know Bobby stops me and goes, Pat, to be fair, he also deals drugs.
Did you guys know that in the script originally, it called for Robin Williams to OD, but he improvised the autoerotic asphyxiation?
There you go. Okay.
I see for a while.
I see what you were doing.
You see what I got there. Thanks, Pat.
The World Series of Suicide.
Yeah.
I don't know. Robin Williams is the kind of guy that, I don't know, when you were known at the beginning of your career for stealing jokes and then became like this over the top, more zany than like actual writing jokes, killing yourself is the only way to get people to forget that you stole jokes.
Yeah.
So it was kind of like, as a comic, I kind of get it. You had some bad time. Like there's other, like, Chris D'Elia should kill himself. There's they're comics that they'll be like, he was grooming people, but remember he died. He had that TV show. So it helps sometimes to kill yourself.
Absolutely.
See, Rich signs off.
Yeah, no,
Bobby didn't.
That's my thesis.
There's too many comics. We need a plague that kills every third comic. You know what I mean? A new
There's
virus.
3 of us here. Fuck you, Rich. I don't like that game.
The only way it passes your house if you put like a heckler's blood on the doorway and kills that comic.
If you hang your flyer from Scotty's Comedy Cove on your front door, the demon passes over you.
I just like the idea of having vials of heckler blood in your house ready for that day. This was Hoboken.
She's like, I was trying to compliment you. It's like, it's the day before. I don't have anything. I'm sorry. It's the best I can do.
I was helping you. I like when they tell you that. I was helping you when they were heckling and you think it's going to end in a fight. They go, hey, man, wasn't that great? I was helping you. You go, no, you asshole. You weren't helping me.
Well, I always say, and I'm helping you now. You're a cunt. Does that help? There you go. You're welcome. Rich, thank you so much for being on the podcast, man. This was a lot of fun just talking shit with you. It's great. Please tell people where they can follow you and all that stuff.
Dick Carr 64, Dick Carr _64 on Instagram. See me on Facebook. I'm banned for life from Twitter. So, come to a show and see me.
Dude, I'm signing off on that. Rich, I remember Rich is hilarious. He's great. And whatever, if he's hosting, headlining, middle, whatever it is, you're going to enjoy the show. If you're in the area and Rich is there, go see a show, man. He's great. Bobby?
I was going to double down and say the same thing. You will have a good time. You know what I mean? He's not somebody from The Daily Show. He's an old school comic that's going to come out and do old school comedy, and he's going to put on old school comics with him. And go see Rich.
But also may have cocaine and strippers and midgets.
That's right.
You never know. You never know. It sounds like a party. So, Bobby, what do you got to promote?
Check out the Davey Mac Sports program. I don't have any shows coming up, so check out this and our Patreon.
I got this weekend. My birthday is October 15th, so I got a comedy show in Derby, Connecticut. There, very low tickets left. So find my Facebook and stuff for tickets there. I think we only got like 15 or 20 tickets left in that show. The next day, October 16th, me and Pete Angelo, I'm headlining comics at Mohegan Sun. So come check that out on Sunday night. People have messaged me. They missed me in New Hampshire last time. I'll be back November 15th in Manchester, New Hampshire for Headliners Comedy Club. So come check that out. Dave Hintz is coming back with me there. Make sure you're subscribing to the podcast. We appreciate you guys being out there. And besides that, once again, Rich, dude, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Great seeing you again and talk with you. Hopefully we get to share a stage again sometime soon. That'll be great.
Absolutely.
And Bobby.
If you can't beat him, or if you can't join him, beat him. And don't be a piece of shit.